We have yet another action camera, the DJI Osmo Action 6. And when I heard about this thing, honestly, I was like, why? The Action 5 is already so good. Do we actually need a new action camera? This right here comes with some minor updates and some problems that we'll get into later in this video as well, man. But let's get into it. So what's new with the Osmo Action 6? Let's start with that. This right here is the industry's first variable aperture action camera. You can shoot from an f2 to an f4 when you're using this, and this is the first time you can do this. But what does that mean though? Because when you hear this, you probably think, oh, I can choose f4 and I can get shot up the field shots on my action camera. And technically you can, but technically you also can't. If you pull this thing out of the box and you set it to f2 and you press record, you're not gonna see a difference in the footage at all. So what exactly is the benefit of this? Just like any other camera, when you adjust your aperture to a higher maximum aperture, you're gonna be letting more light into the sensor. So in turn, this is gonna improve the overall low light capabilities of this camera. Now where that shallow depth of field comes in is when you're using the new macro lens. Super simple to use. All you gotta do is screw it onto the front of the Osmo Action 6. On the lens, it has a focus ring, so you can choose what you wanna focus on, and you can actually get some shallow depth of field shots with a blurry background on an action camera this small, which is kinda crazy. Now, there's a couple things that I don't like about the macro lens, and I'll touch on those later in this video, but it does what it's intended to do. It's not extremely pleasing bokeh, it's not the best shallow depth of field that you've ever seen, but the fact that you can get shallow depth of field shots in an action camera this small is actually very impressive. Beyond that, the Osmo Action 6 has a brand new sensor. This new sensor is a 1/1.1 inch square sensor, which is a lot of words, but essentially this new sensor unlocks a brand new custom 4K mode for the Osmo Action 6. This new custom 4K mode allows you to film in a square aspect ratio. And just hearing that out loud, you're probably thinking, why? Why would you want to film in a square aspect ratio? We've all been in a situation where we film a video, I guess, landscape, and then we want to convert that video to a vertical video for Instagram or TikTok. And that means that we have to zoom the footage in and we lose a bunch of quality, and we also lose a lot of what's on the sides of the image. When you're filming in the square aspect ratio, it allows you to cover all of these bases but not lose resolution or a bunch of footage on either side. And then for the people who love the vintage aspect ratios, you can actually just use this square aspect ratio to upload it to wherever you want. For the people who are familiar with the DJI ecosystem, this is gonna be extremely familiar. You still got the 10-bit D-Log M, you got the compatibility with the DJI wireless microphones, you got the compatibility with the DJI Osmo accessories. This action camera also shoots 4K up to 120 frames per second, but that's pretty much it when it comes to new things with this action camera. This is a vlogging test on the Osmo Action 6. Now you can use this with the DJI wireless microphones, you can use this with wireless earbuds, but me personally, when I'm using an action camera, the majority of the time, I'm just using it for behind the scenes content. I'm not having a microphone on it. So for anybody who might find themselves in a similar situation as me, this is what you can expect. This is what it sounds. I'm on the street, it's a car coming by behind me. So this is what it would sound like. Filming in 4x3, 4K right now, which is what I typically film in, just because you get that flexibility to reframe and post for vertical and horizontal content. So this is what you can expect. It's the morning, it's crispy, got a little bit of sun peeking through these trees over here. Atmosphere is nice. I like it. I actually started vlogging when I started my channel on an action camera, a DJI, was not DJI, it was GoPro. What am I talking about? It was a GoPro Hero 3 or something, I don't know. It didn't have stabilization, whatever. So this just kind of takes me back. You know, it's a lot of people who want to get into vlogging. They feel like they gotta purchase the most expensive camera in the world. They gotta purchase the most expensive lens in the world. But honestly, you could really start out with an action camera
or even your phone.
Before we get into some of my biggest problems with the Osmo Action 6, I want to tell y'all where I got my animated text and transitions for this video. Storyblocks is an online library with millions of assets to spice up your videos. Whether you need high quality stock footage, animated titles, motion templates, or sound effects, Storyblocks has you covered. All of these assets are royalty free and available for all of the major editing platforms out there like Final Cut Pro 10, DaVinci Resolve, as well as Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects. One really cool thing about Storyblocks is when you sign up for an unlimited plan, you can use as many of these assets for whatever you want, whenever you want. If you want access to over 1 million editing assets to download and use whenever you want, make sure you guys check out Storyblocks. There's gonna be a link down in the description below. Now let's talk about the things that I don't like about the Osmo Action 6. Let's talk about my problems with this macro lens. This is such a standout addition for the Osmo Action 6. And with this feedback, hopefully DJI can implement some quick fixes for it. Now, when you hear that the Osmo Action 6 has a macro lens, you would expect it to work how a macro lens will work on your mirrorless or DSLR camera. Essentially meaning that you could focus however close it is that you want on whatever it is that you want. If you want to film a penny and be able to focus on the text on the penny, you could do that. But with the macro lens for the Osmo Action 6, it's not really a macro lens. And what I mean by this is, yeah, you could focus closer than using the Osmo Action 6 on its own, but with this macro lens, you actually can't get macro shots. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the minimum focusing distance is with the macro lens, but it's not close, it's just closer. And that's fine, I think that that's great. I think that that's a great addition to be able to actually get shallow depth of field shots on the Osmo Action 6, but it's not really a macro lens, it's just a closer focus. The Osmo Action 6, just like every other action camera out there, has a pretty small screen. And that means that you really can't see what you're focusing on when you use this macro lens. I've even tried to connect the Osmo Action 6 to my iPhone and use the mobile app, but the tethering and the preview that you get for the Osmo Action 6 on the iPhone, the quality of the streaming isn't high enough for you to even be able to see what's in focus either. So when you're using this macro lens, you're kind of shooting blind to an extent. I think one simple fix that DJI can implement into the Osmo Action 6 is just adding focus peaking. If this had focus peaking when the macro lens was attached to it, it would make using it so much easier. And last but definitely not least, probably my biggest problem with the macro lens is that when you're using it with the Osmo Action 6, you have to use rock steady on when you're using it. Now, this doesn't sound like it's a problem, but for me, when I heard about the macro lens on the Osmo Action 6, the first thing that I thought about was getting those cool POV perspectives of the camera being mounted to whatever it is that you're moving.
This clip is an example of what it looks like when stabilization is on when you're using a macro lens and why you don't want it. You can see that as I'm moving the camera, the stabilization is actually swaying the focal point of the shot, which is the camera, which is what you don't want when you're trying to do, I guess, POV shots. If you have something mounted to an object, you want it to be consistent in the distance and also the framing of the thing that it's mounted to. And you can see that having to have stabilization on makes this impossible. This is why we don't want stabilization with this. I mean, in this specific scenario. Anyways.
As I'm making this video, DJI has just pushed a new update out for the Osmo Action 6 that fixes one of my problems with the macro lens and also introduces some new features to the camera. So that problem that I talked about with you having to use rock steady when using the macro lens, they actually fixed it. So my biggest gripe with the lens has actually been fixed by DJI. Well, at least one of them. I wish they would still add focus peaking, but that's a great addition. They also introduced a new quality priority mode. Now, this is supposed to enhance image quality at the cost of power consumption. Now, I won't have a lot of time to test this out, but I'll make sure to put some side-by-side images here so you can see what the difference is between this. And the last new feature that they added with this update is film tone presets. I'm assuming this is similar to recipes that you get from Fujifilm. I know a lot of other camera companies are trying to implement these into the camera. I'll put a couple of these examples here so you can see what those are. But let's continue on with the video. Now, with all of that said about the DJI Osmo Action 6, when it comes to new features, I love the fact that this has a bigger sensor. I think that that's always going to be a plus, and in theory, it should improve the image quality of the action camera. And I love the fact that that new sensor allows you to use that custom 4K mode because it adds versatility to using an action camera. Being able to deliver your media to a bunch of different platforms in unison without having to sacrifice quality or image on the sides is a great addition. But while I say that, the 4x3 mode on the Osmo Action 5 and all of the other action cameras that DJI offers is pretty damn close. I love 4x3. The 1x1 is a little bit better when it comes to cropping, but 4x3 is like right behind it. It doesn't feel significant to me, if that makes sense. Overall, I think the Osmo Action 6 is a great addition to the Osmo Action line by DJI. I just don't know if it's worth an upgrade. But at the same time, I feel like action cameras, for me personally, with the price of them not being as significant as buying a brand new mirrorless camera body, buying a new action camera isn't that expensive to do. So if you feel like the additions that come with this are worth it, I don't blame you for picking it up. It's probably only gonna cost you $100 to $200 extra for you to upgrade. So if you feel like it's worth it to have this quality in your pocket, I'm not gonna fault you at all. But if you don't have an action camera already, this is probably the one to buy. Obviously, if you're interested, it's gonna be links down in the description for this and the brand new macro lens. Drop this video a like if you enjoyed it. Make sure y'all check out my brand new everyday cinema LUT as well. I'm gonna roll that promo right now. The problem with LUTs is they're way too situational. This is why I made the everyday cinema LUT. It looks good everywhere, every time. Indoors, outdoors, cloudy, sunny, artificial lighting, low light. It just looks good, and it's pretty much instant. I tested this look and formatted it for Sony, Canon, Fuji, and even iPhone. It's also 3 variations of this LUT to fit your temperature preference, and it even includes the DaVinci Resolve Power Grade for more in-depth adjustments. I use this look on all of my content. If you want your footage to look as good as mine's, make sure you check out the Everyday Cinema LUT.